Hey friend, before you drift off to sleep, let me take you somewhere a little colder, a little rougher. Place where life isn't about scrolling or streaming, but about simple, hard work. Okay. Imagine a tiny wooden hut with smoke curling up through a hole in the roof, animals shuffling nearby, and the chill sneaking into every corner. This is a day in the life of a medieval peasant. No knights, no castles, just the daily grind of chores that never end. So, get comfortable. Maybe pull your blanket a little tighter, dim the lights, and let the quiet sounds of the past settle in. We're about to walk through a world where every sunrise means a fresh list of tasks, and every sunset feels like a small victory. Ready? Let's begin. It's just before dawn, though you'd hardly call it dawn. Outside, the sky is a thick, heavy gray that seems to swallow any hint of light. It's the kind of early morning that feels like the world is holding its breath, waiting for it. Something though, no one quite knows what. Inside your tiny wooden hut, the air is cold enough to make your breath hang like smoke. You lie bundled in a heap of rough woolen blankets and furs, but the chill still creeps into your bones, stubborn as the frost cresting the windowsill. Fire pit in the center of the room offers a weak glow, little more than glowing embers now, popping softly and sending up thin curls of smoke that hang in the cold air like ghosts. You can smell it, wood smoke mixed with the faint but unmistakable scent of damp straw and something earthy, animal-like. The goat snoozes under the rickety table, occasionally twitching an ear or snuffling softly. Chickens are nestled in the corner, huddled tight together, feathers ruffled against the cold. The quiet clucks, the only sounds breaking the silence. Your fingers are stiff and numb, pressed against the rough sackcloth of your tunic. You can barely wiggle your toes, tucked beneath the layers of fabric. The straw mattress beneath you is uneven and hard, and your pillow is a coarse sack stuffed with more straw, scratchy and lumpy. Not at all like the soft beds you might have heard about in the castles of lords and ladies. But this is home, and home is what you know. You shift slowly, careful not to wake the others. Your spouse's breath is steady beside you, your children tangled in a pile nearby. There's no privacy here, really not with the walls made of woven wood and mud, thin enough for the wind to whistle right through the cracks. The roof leaks in spots, and sometimes, when it rains, you have to move your bed to avoid the worst of it. But for now, the roof is holding, and that's something. There's no time to stay warm in bed. The day waits for no one, especially not in winter. You reach out and pull your cloak closer, the thick fabric worn and patched so many times it feels more like a blanket than a garment. The cold air bites at your skin as you stand, the floorboards creaking under your feet or as that the wind rattling the shutters. Outside, the ground is frozen hard, a solid crust of ice that crunches and cracks with every step you take. Your first task is water. The well outside is half frozen, and the path to it is slippery with ice. You bundle your hands in rough cloth, gripping the bucket as carefully as you can. One wrong step, and you could fall, spill the water, or worse, break a bone. There's no choice. You need the water to cook, to drink, to wash what little you can. You trudge through the cold morning, the sky slowly brightening just enough to see the frost glinting on every branch and blade of grass back inside. The animals wait. The chickens cluck impatiently, the pigs snort and shuffle. The cow stands stoically in a corner, watching you with tired eyes. You break apart the frozen hay and scatter it across their troughs, grateful for whatever scraps you can spare. The hearth needs tending, and the fire needs woodlots of it. There are chores, stacked as high as the woodpile outside, and none of them come with breaks or rest. But you keep moving because this is life. The grind of the daily chores, the cold that never really leaves. The endless effort to keep yourself and your family just barely warm, sparely fed, just barely alive. And as the first weak light filters through the oil parchment window, you take a breath, wrap your cloak tight, and step deeper into the day. The first thing you do after filling the bucket is head over to the chickens. They're already awake, ruffling their feathers and pecking at the frozen ground near the coop. They don't give you a choice about being early. Chickens are loud like that. You open the coop door carefully so they don't scatter everywhere. A few eggs might be waiting, but most likely not. Winter slows them down, makes them huddle close. Just like you gathered the scattered straw and toss it fresh over the bedding, hoping it'll keep them a little warmer. You toss in handfuls of cracked grain and dried kitchen scraps, watching the birds cluck and squabble. It's noisy, messy, and chaotic, but it's life. Without those eggs, meals would be even thinner. Next up are the pigs. They grunt and shuffle, noses rooting around in the mud near the barn. You toss what little scraps you have into their trough fold. Vegetables, leftover bread, maybe a bit of salted pork from last season. The smell isn't pleasant, but hunger doesn't care. The pigs need feeding if they're going to keep growing through the cold months. And you need them to grow for meat, for warmth, for barter. The cow waits quietly, her big eyes watching you. Milking is a slow, cold job that can't be rushed. Cute. You break apart the frozen hay and shove it into the feed trough. Then, with hands already chilled, you settle down beside her and begin the rhythm of milking. It's work, but there's a small comfort in the steady sound of milk hitting the bucket. Every drop counts. Some will be turned into butter or cheese, which lasts longer in the cold months. Back inside, the fire pit demands attention. The embers you left smoldering overnight are barely alive. You poke at them with a long stick, blowing gently to coax a spark. Wood is precious, and you're careful not to waste even a single log. But the fire needs to grow, or the whole hut will stay cold and dark. You fetch another bundle of kindling, and stack it carefully near the hearth. Twigs and dried brush, gathered by children or neighbors, are easier to light than heavy logs. Once the fire catches, you throw on a larger piece of wood and sit back just for a moment, letting the warmth creep into your chilled fingers. Cooking is next, though calling it that feels generous. You scrape the bottom of the pot for yesterday's stew, probably a watery mix of root vegetables, beans, and maybe a strip of salted meat if you're lucky. It simmers slowly, filling the room with a faint, earthy smell. It won't win any feasts, but it's warm, it's filling, and it's what keeps your family going. While the stew bubbles, you settle in for the endless mending. Torn cloaks, ripped stockings, patches for blankets each, stitch a small victory against the wear and tear of survival. Wool spinning waits for later. For now, the chill makes your fingers too stiff for the delicate work outside. The mud has frozen solid, turning every walk into a careful exercise in balance. The sun is weak, casting long shadows that stretch across the village. You see your neighbors already hard at work, chopping wood, hauling water, fixing fences battered by winter storms. There's no rest here, just the steady grind, day after day. Children run around with small bundles of kindling or help chase away crows from the fields. Their laughter is rare but precious, a brief burst of light in the gray, cold world. Even so, they don't get to play for long. Work calls. You check on the goat next. Its fur, thick and matted. It's tucked beneath the table, keeping warm by your hearth's fading heat. The goat provides milk, a rare treat, and its company makes the hut feel less empty. You scratch behind its ears and wonder if it's enough to keep it alive until spring. As the morning turns to afternoon, the list of chores stretches longer. Fence repairs, tool sharpening, hauling more wood. The cold gnaws at your cheeks and numbs your hands, but you keep going because that's all there is. Each small task is a battle, negotiation with the cold, the mud, and the endless demands of survival. But you don't complain. You just move forward, because giving up means something worse. And so the day continues, slow and steady, a rhythm as old as the land itself. Every chore a step toward making it through another winter day. By midday, the weak winter sun barely warms the air, but you've already been moving for hours. Your fingers sting from the cold, and the ache in your back is a dull, constant companion. Still, there's no pause, no moment to truly rest, not while there's work left undone. Outside, the village is alive with a steady rhythm of chores. Men head toward the woods, axes in hand, ready to wrestle with frozen trees for firewood. The trees stand heavy and silent, blanketed in snow, but the need for wood is urgent. Every log you bring back could mean the difference between warmth and frostbite. Light and darkness, women and children cluster near the spinning wheel and loom. Wool doesn't spin itself, and every thread pulled is another bit of warmth stitched into a cloak or blanket. The wool is scratchy and stubborn, but it's better than nothing. You see a child, her small hands, clumsy but determined, twisting fibers into yarn under the watchful eye of her mother. Every generation learns the same lessons: how to mend, how to spin, how to survive. Back inside your hut, the stew simmers low, the scent barely reaching beyond the hearth. You stir it gently, careful not to spill what little you have left. The stew isn't much, but it's fuel. You scrape the bottom of the pot for bits of root and beans, knowing full well that every crumb counts. Food is never plentiful, especially in the cold months. The pantry is bare, except for a few sacks of grain guarded jealously against the ever-present threat of rats. Speaking of rats, you hear the faint scrabble beneath the floorboards and walls, the constant, unsettling reminder that your home isn't just shared with your family. You curse softly, grabbing a broom to chase the intruders, though you know it's a losing battle. Cats help keep the vermin at bay, but even they have limits. The midday chores blurred together, hauling more water from the half-frozen stream, stacking firewood that's still too wet to burn well, patching holes in the thatch roof before the next storm. Every job is harder in the cold. Tools freeze in your hands. Hands crack and bleed from the biting air. You swallow the pain and keep going. A neighbor stops by briefly, exchanging a few words over the fence. There's a shared glance, an unspoken understanding of the hardships you both face. Community isn't about celebrations or feasts here. It's about enduring together, knowing that misery is a bond no one really wants, but everyone shares. By afternoon, the cold starts to seep deeper into your bones. The sun's light fades quickly, casting long shadows over the muddy, frozen ground. You check on the livestock again, feeding the chickens, scraping frozen mud from the pig's trough, and making sure the cow has enough hay. These animals are lifelines, and neglecting them isn't an option. You pause for a brief moment near the fire, rubbing your hands together and taking a sip of weak ale or water that's been boiled 3 times to make it less deadly. It's not much, but it's enough to keep you moving. The spinning wheel calls again in the evening. You settle down with a worn spindle and begin twisting fibers, your movements slow and steady. The fire crackles softly, casting flickering shadows on the cracked walls. The children start to drift to sleep, tangled in blankets and each other's warmth. Outside, the wind howls and the snow begins to fall lightly. The day's chores are done for now, but the list will be waiting tomorrow. You think about the cold night ahead, the frozen floor beneath you, in the hope that the firewood will last just a little longer. In the quiet moments, you find a strange kind of peace and acceptance that this is life. Hard, unrelenting, but yours. And with every stitch, every log stacked, every meal shared in silence, you're not just surviving, you're enduring. As the sun slips behind the horizon, the village settles into a hushed rhythm. The sky turns a dull slate gray, swallowing the last pale light. Inside your hut, the fire's glow is the only beacon against the gathering darkness. It's casting flickering shadows that dance along the cracked walls. Evening means rounding up the animals. The chickens cluck and flutter, reluctant to leave their roosts in the cold. You coax them inside the coop, shutting the door tight to keep out the night's chill and the ever-present threat of predators. The pigs grunt softly in their pen, noses twitching as you toss them the last scraps of the day. The cow stands patient, her warm breath misting in the cold air as you give her one last handful of hay before closing the barn door. With the animals safely tucked away, you return to the hearth. The fire needs tending. Coals must be stirred, fresh wood added carefully to keep the glow steady but not wasteful. Firewood is more precious than gold in these months. A good fire means warmth, light, and a tiny island of comfort in a world that's otherwise cold and unforgiving. Dinner is a modest affair, The pot simmers with a watery stew made from the last of the root vegetables, a few dried beans, and maybe a scrap of salted meat if you've been lucky. The smell isn't much to boast about. It's earthy and bland, but it's hot and filling, enough to push back the gnawing hunger for a little while longer. You sit close to the fire, the warmth slowly creeping into your chilled fingers. The family gathers nearby, bodies huddled close for shared heat. There's no feast, no celebrations, just the quiet, steady rhythm of survival. Someone hums a soft tune, barely audible over the crackling wood, a small comfort against the cold and the dark. The night brings no rest, not really. Once the stew is eaten and the fire settled, the chores continue. Mending clothes is a constant necessity. You pull out the worn cloak with frayed edges, threading the needle carefully, despite fingers stiff with cold. Each stitch is slow and deliberate, a small act of hope that this garment might last a little longer. Keep the cold at bay, just one more day. The spinning wheel turns again, the soft creak filling the quiet room as you twist wool into thread. The task is repetitive but necessary, weaving warmth out of cold, thread by thread. Children drift off to sleep nearby, wrapped in layers and the tangled limbs of siblings. Their soft breathing is a fragile reassurance that life carries on, that outside. The wind whistles through the cracks in the walls, a haunting song that reminds you winter's grip hasn't loosened. Sometimes the sound is joined by the distant howl of wolves prowling at the edges of the village, hungry and bold. You pull your cloak tighter, keep your knife close, and listen carefully for any other sounds that shouldn't be there. The night is long and cold, broken only by the occasional snap of wood settling or the muffled cough of a child. You lie awake in the dim firelight, counting embers, listening to the rhythms of the hut, the creak of the roof, the rustle of straw, the soft snoring of the goat beneath the table. Sleep comes in fits, never deep or peaceful. When the fire dies low, the cold seeps back in, prickling your skin and stealing warmth from your toes. You shift beneath the blankets, willing to chill away, knowing that morning will bring the same endless list of chores, the same struggle to keep firewood stacked, water carried, animals fed, family alive. But for now, you close your eyes and hold on to the flicker of warmth and the promise of another day. Because in this world, endurance is everything. And even in the darkest, coldest nights, it's the small, steady acts, the mended cloak, the tended fire, the whispered lullaby that keep hope flickering against the long winter when the first pale light of dawn finally creeps through the cracks in the walls. It's a quiet reminder that you've made it through another night. The cold still lingers, but there's something different in the air, a fragile hint of change. It's not spring yet, not really. Winter still holds its grip tight, but somewhere deep inside, you start to believe that maybe, just maybe, the thaw is coming. You rise slowly, aching from yesterday's labor, but grateful for the chance to begin again. The list of chores stretches endlessly ahead, but there's comfort in the routine. Gathering water, feeding animals, tending fires, these aren't just tasks, they're the rhythm that keeps life moving, the small acts that weave survival into. Each day, there's a strength in this daily grind that outsiders might not see. It's quiet, stubborn, and often invisible, but it's real. Every log chopped, every stitch sewn, every bucket carried is a victory against the cold and the dark. It's a claim on life itself, and yet, even as you work, your thoughts drift to spring, to the promise of green shoots pushing through frozen soil, to the slow return of warmth on your face, and the longer days that don't end in such bitter cold. You dream of the garden waking up, of fresh herbs and wild berries, the chance to plant seeds and watch them grow. But spring is a cautious hope. It's not a sudden burst of life, but a slow, careful crawl forward. The earth is still hard beneath your feet, and the stores in your pantry are low. The damage of winter shows in cracked tools, tired bodies, and empty granaries. Some families won't make it through at all. You've seen doors closed, chimneys cold, and neighbors gone silent. Still, you hold on to hope, not the bright, careless kind, but a quiet endurance born from years of knowing the land and its harsh ways. You've learned to expect the worst and be thankful for the smallest mercies. It's a day without frostbite, a meal that doesn't turn to gruel, a night when the roof doesn't leak. Life in the medieval village isn't about grand victories or sweeping changes. It's about the persistence of the ordinary, the courage found in routine, and the unspoken bond between people who share the same bitter cold and the same fading light. Sometimes, when the work is done and the fire's crackle fills the room, you catch a glimpse of something more. It's a flicker of laughter from the children playing quietly by the hearth, a song hummed softly by your spouse, the simple joy of a warm blanket pulled close. These moments are precious. They're the proof that even in the harshest seasons, life still finds a way to whisper its stubborn will to survive. So you keep going. You rise with the dawn. You chop wood, you feed animals, you mend clothes, and you cook what you can. You carry on because this is the life you have, the world you know. And through the endless cycles of cold and work, hunger and hope, you endure. Because in the end, survival isn't a single triumph. It's a collection of small victories, one more stitch, one more breath, one more day. And when the snow finally melts and the green returns, you won't forget the long winter that came before. You'll carry its lessons in your bones and its stories in your heart. You made it. You're still here, and for now, that is enough.